right, welcome back to the Berg Podcast. We just recently wrapped up our series on core values, which we hope you've had some time to take a listen to. If not, that's all right. And what we're going to talk about today is, these core values, they kind of identify who we are and how we operate. But that being said, each one of us approaches situations from a different experience point and a different perspective. So kind of talk a little bit today about core values and how we work as a team, knowing that we're each coming from a different spot. So today on the podcast, we've got myself, Bryan. We've also got Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And we've got Dan.
Hey, everybody.
Also known as Hayes.
Yeah. Anyways, in case you missed that when we started, Isaac Hayes. We're trying to make Dan sound like Isaac Hayes today.
Yeah, that'd be nice if you could do that.
Yeah. All right. So perception versus reality. So, we came up with these core values and they're very meaningful to us. We think that they're kind of embody how we want to act as an organization, how we want to think as an organization. But that being said, Ford, you brought up a good point here. Not everyone acts like somebody who owns Berg Construction, and not everybody understands what that means. Not everybody's going to act like someone who's got 30 years of experience. So each of us comes to the table from a different perspective. So why is that important to acknowledge?
Well, I think that when you have these core values and we put them out there and we're trying to get them out so everyone understands them from, first day on the job till you've been working for us for 15 years or anywhere in between. Then if something happens and someone looks at it and they're like, well, that didn't align with the core values. And so all of a sudden you have this scenario where someone is feeling that something is not correct or a challenge. And so that's where I think that this is a good conversation to have, because that two people can look at the very same situation, and because of their perspective from all their life, their family, everything else, they might see it two different ways. And so it's not to say which way is right or wrong, but it's just to understand that not everybody, there's no group think. There's the ability to people to look at it from the other perspective. And I think that that's important in general, even in today's times where everybody's kind of pointing to think in one particular way, but from here, and we have to be willing to listen to that other person's perspective on that thing. And maybe they don't have all the information. Maybe they just have a glimpse of information, and maybe they just need more explanation. But we need to be able to have those honest conversations, and someone tell you that they didn't think something was within the values. And then you can explain why you did the thing you did. And maybe it wasn't, but maybe they point out something that you missed, or maybe it's something that they just didn't fully understand. And so it's important that it's a constant conversation.
Yeah, that's important, right? I mean, even the best of us would acknowledge we don't know everything. But anyone who's ever been put in a position where they have to make a decision makes a decision with the information they have, right? Hopefully, they've taken the time to evaluate the information or assess what's available to them, but they've got to make a decision, right? So how do we get through to our folks in the field and to make them comfortable knowing that they've got to make a decision, and they may make a decision from a different perspective than you or I would, or maybe another foreman might, but that's okay. How do we make people comfortable with that idea?
Well, I think one thing that we've talked about multiple times, maybe not on the podcast, but in general, but it is that if you made a decision and it turns out wrong, but you made a decision, I'm willing to fully support that, even if it is wrong. We can make an adjustment. But not making a decision is actually a bigger, more upsetting thing to me than the fact that you made a decision, you tried to do something. Unfortunately, it did not work out the way that you had hoped it did, or you envisioned it with what you're doing. But just standing there and doing nothing is definitely the antithesis to what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, doing nothing is a decision, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, all too many times we say when you make a decision that, it was something conscious and you did, but a lot of the decisions we make, you didn't even make a decision. You delayed or you deferred, and then a decision was made for you. And so much of what's built into our core values is trying to give people the authority to say, let's make a decision based on the information you have and the experience you have. We've put you in a position and trust that you are going to do what's in the best interest of yourself, your team, and Berg as a whole. And if you do that and make a decision, to Ford's point, we're really not going to harp on if it doesn't turn out exactly the way we wanted it to, because you made the best decision you could. Certainly not every decision I've made has been correct. And I think Ford would agree with the same, and so would you. But I think if you look at our core values, they are consistent in that they're trying to allow for the space and the guidance to be able to operate and do it in a way that you are comfortable making decisions and doing things that are your responsibility.
Right. And owning your piece, I think, is a big piece of that, right? So if you're willing to own what's in front of you, take responsibility for your work, and you make a decision and you own the failures and the successes, I think the world will always value that, right? As an organization. It's hard. So let's flip the coin now. And, we're talking a little bit about the perspective of someone maybe who has less experience or is inexperienced or doesn't have what we might hope is some of the appropriate support mechanism, maybe, to the guy who's got tons of experience. And maybe he's in a situation where we're making a decision that's counter to his experience.
That's one thing that is always so unique. We have brought a couple people into the team that have had a lot of experience, and they've been able to work with what we do. But part of this business and part of what we've done here is that, I didn't work for anyone else besides my family before we started this business. Everyone in this room came from different, we're looking at it constantly from a new lens, whether it's buying a new piece of equipment that no one's tried before or a different, just the fact that we really do value people being home on the weekends as much as we can and things of that nature. We're doing things a little bit differently. We're still moving the same yards of dirt that somebody else is. We're not doing anything like that uniquely, but we're always constantly trying to question the norm, because a lot of things in this industry are done the way that they've been done because that's the way they've been done for a very long time. And some people have perfected things that way. They have it down to an expertise. And other things, why do we do that? I don't know. That's what the guy before me did, and that's what I'm going to keep doing. And in today's world, with the speed of what they want these projects done and the speed of the clients pushing on us, we have to always be looking for something new. So that's where they can feel that tension per se, because they don't think it's what they signed up for. But the reality is that every day we're looking for that little edge. We're not talking huge edges, but every day it's just a slight little edge is what we need to improve ourselves.
It's tough. We all make decisions a little differently, right? I actually was talking to Blair about this earlier. I'm the kind of person who's very solutions driven. And so I might make a quick decision at times, knowing that I'm going to have to do it over, or and sometimes that's how I am with technology. So technology falls under my purview because we're small, but it's not necessarily because I'm an expert at it. So when we do some of these things with apps, let's say internally from the office, we're saying we need a solution. We got to track time better, or we got to get information into people's hands faster. So my typical thought process is all right, well, let's solve that problem fast. And then if we need to reevaluate our options or figure out if there's a better solution, that's perfectly fine with me. And then I'll roll out something new. But that's going to drive a lot of people crazy, because it's 6 weeks from now, maybe we're using a different app. The current example might be some of the credit card reconciliation stuff, right? So we just went through this whole thing. So that's talk about two different perspectives. I'm trying to own a solution, make a fast decision, because I feel like that's what's necessary. Other people around me are saying, "What the heck is this guy doing? Why are we rolling out something fast? Let's slow down and make the right decision."
Well, Ford brought up something there that I think it lends itself sort of to some of the feedback that I get at times, that maybe we're not 100% consistent, or people don't feel we're consistent. And he brought up work-life balance, right? Which is, as everybody knows, very important to me. I mean, I have 3 young girls. I'd like to be home a reasonable amount of time. But you're trying to balance work and getting stuff done with having a home life and spending time with your family and doing the things you enjoy doing. And sometimes people say to me, well, you say that you want a really good work-life balance, but then you want to run tens. And it's one of the things Ford talks about when you're getting that two different perspective look, that it would seem to be inconsistent, but it's not, because the industry norm is that you work Saturdays. So the way I'm trying to achieve that is to say, hey, we still need to work those 50 hours, but we can work them during the work week and just be a couple hours extra every day. And that lets you have Saturday. And that's the way we try and achieve that. So it's one of the ways I feel like you can end up with a feeling of some inconsistency, is that at the end of the day, we are contractually obligated to do certain things to meet certain milestones. And those drivers have to be getting that done, because if you don't get that done, you've failed to meet the milestone. It's a problem company-wide. So it is something that creates one of these things that from one person's perspective can seem inconsistent, but it isn't actually. It's very consistent. It's that we need to own our piece. We need to act like an owner. We need to be a servant leader, be willing to do those things, whether it be in regular earthwork or in snow or in rainstorms when we have to do cleanup stuff. And they all seem like they could perhaps be inconsistent, but they're actually very consistent to achieving the goal of reaching the milestones.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. So a lot of it is at times industry or production driven, right? Like there's things we have to get done. So we try and do things with our core values in mind, and we make decisions with our core values in mind. But it's easy at times to see why, from someone else's perspective, it may not align, right? So, one of the things we talk about a little bit is we're moving so fast that it's difficult to do sort of that group think mentality, right? And we try and be transparent. We try and communicate as much as we can and tell people why we're making decisions. But how do we make sure we're in a spot where, Ford, you brought it up earlier, doing it one way because it's always been done that way isn't necessarily the right thing. But at the same regard, we gotta, if Dan, you're talking about production, some things we just got to do. We have to push at times because of the work that's in front of us. How do we make sure we're combining the two? How do we make sure we take people's other perspectives into consideration, not bulldoze them over because we're working so hard and so fast because we got too much in front of us, but also our understanding that sometimes just because it's a perspective doesn't mean that that we're going to always allow every voice to have a piece of input. So you understand what I'm trying to say? I'm rambling a little bit here, but I feel like we're kind of on two different, like we're saying two different things here that we know at times can be conflicting, but at the end of the day, we're trying to slam them together, mesh it with what we're trying to accomplish, and take people's thoughts into consideration. So,
well, I think we'll talk about this on another podcast about like what makes you win here at Berg. But I think it's part of that is that, you can come in with a different perspective. We used to have a employee here that his perspective on things was very unique. He did not drive a vehicle. He had specific food choices that he had, which most of what those things, when we had conversations, would basically put him in direct conflict with what we did for a living. But this was his job, so he was able to do both things. Within himself, he was able to be comfortable with having a different perspective. But when he was at work, he was doing the job that was in front of him. And I think that, with the autonomy, with all the other things that we try and do here, there's also the fact that, when a decision is made and you don't understand it or it doesn't fit with you, if you look at that decision that someone else made and look at it against the core values, there's a good chance that it'll tie to there somewhere. It just might not be from your perspective. And sometimes in life, sometimes our clients ask us to do things that we don't want to do either. But sometimes it's part of a job. That is how it gets done. And, not every day is rainbows and unicorns. But if we get the work done that we need to get done and try and be productive when we are on the job site, then all of a sudden, usually the schedules are set up that we can get it done. It's just that if weather and different things happen to us, sometimes we have to, get it done because of, there's a hammer over our head.
Well, what comes to mind, Bryan, from your question really is the single most important role at Berg Construction, in my mind, is foreman superintendent. It's the guy who's in the field who has to make that job run. Because at most points, that's the person who's going to feel that pressure. The person who's going to feel the pressure from, this is our core values and I understand them. This is how we'd like to do things. This is who we want to be. And this is the production schedule. This is the milestone I have to hit. He has to balance those two and express to our team why he's making the decision he is. And it's one of those things that's really difficult because I feel like in modern society, we talk about it. There's been this thing that you want to over communicate. And you and Bryan and I have had a discussion where we've realized it isn't really over communicate, it's communicate effectively. You'll say message delivered, message received, or message received, message delivered. And so many times our team feels like they may not get an often enough or a clear enough communication from me specifically, or from Ford, or from you. But the other thing we need to do as we continue to grow is allow our leaders who make the decisions on a daily basis to be the ones to communicate, to feel empowered enough for Brad and Shay and Scott, or Scott Gross, or Gary and Ben and JD, for these guys to make a decision, do what they think is in the best interest of the job, the team, and the company, and then explain to their team why they're doing it. And if they do that, they will put those two things together, and you will have, at minimum, you will have an understanding of why the person made the decision they did to ask you to do the thing they're doing in the way that they're asking you to do it. And I would bet you 99% of the times they would explain to you in a way that you would see how it is in line with our values. But when that communication breaks down, you end up sometimes with a feeling that not understanding why a decision was made. So part of it is we have to communicate better as a team throughout the ranks. And part of it is we also have to we have to encourage people to ask questions, because I may not have time to answer 50 questions, but if you just ask a question about why we're doing something and it removes all of the concern and all the questions, that team can actually be more productive because now they're all pulling in the same direction.
That's a great point. And, there's a right way and a wrong way to question things too, right? I think that's part of it. And so like when you're questioning things from an educational perspective, because you want to know, I'm interested in knowing why this is the way we do something. I'm interested in knowing, is there a different way to approach this? That's a lot different than questioning someone else's authority or decision-making capability, right? So I think that's, part of what you're saying there is, I think is what I'm picking up on, is that sometimes like it's not a bad thing to not understand the perspective. And in fact, it's probably a good thing to try and ask or understand the perspective, but it doesn't necessarily always mean, that you're questioning someone's decision-making or authority.
Well, and actually from another podcast with Bill Witt and then another podcast they talked about, it was the saying that at some point when someone questions something, we've lost the fact that they're questioning the situation, not the person, and people can take it as a personal affront. Like, why was this person questioning and as you said, it's all about how the message was asked or message delivered. The person's like, this person's just like constantly like second guessing me when maybe they're just trying to learn. So it's all about how you ask. And it's all about, from the other person's perspective, is maybe the person just wanted to know what was going on, but they aren't really second guessing you. So sometimes, that's why we always joke about when there's a challenging conversation, it's in person or it's over the phone. It is not by text message or email or anything like that, because you can't read the context into it. And so often that's a challenge because, people can fire off a quick text and the other person doesn't know what's going on in the scenario. And so that's where, a face-to-face or a conversation over the phone when two people can have it and talk something out is so much better for both parties.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, and, one more thing that made me think of what we were talking there, like, when's the right time to ask the question? It might not always be in the heat of the moment, right?
Yeah, something along those lines that I sort of was thinking here was, to Ford's point, in another podcast, the podcast that I did with Aaron Witt, he asked me a question, and it led me down the road of when I did the FTX training when I was in Nashville. And I realized it brought me back to like even hearing my own dad talk. And that you have to be self-aware enough when you're in a situation, when you're interacting with a group, to know where you come from, where you stand, like who you are as a person. And I struggle in situations when I'm not able to be at least significantly in control. When I have to take direct orders, it is a struggle for me. I have to be conscious of being a listener and being participant. And I'm on the podcast saying that because I want people to be able to hear it, and that's okay. Like that can be okay. You just have to be aware of it. And that's important on our teams because each of us at times is going to have to be the listener and the active participant. So there may be a time when there's a very experienced equipment operator who the foreman needs to hear his opinion because the guy may be able to point out, hey, I think this could go better if we do this. And the foreman may not want to hear it at that point, but he may need to hear it. So we really all need to be mature and open enough to be able to hear what people are saying and then react to it in a way that benefits all of us because each of us has good ideas. I say it often, Tom Burke's a great example in snow. Tom just comes up with ways to get things done. And you'd say, that's not the best idea of the way to get that done. But to your point of making a quick decision in the spur of the moment to solve the problem at that moment, that was the best decision. And so that falls right in line with what we say, because we say, create solutions, act as an owner. That's what that sort of behavior does. And it doesn't make you right. It just gives you the guidance and the freedom to act.
That's a great place to wrap it up. Another more topics for another day, but it's perspective is definitely something that we need to take into consideration when we're evaluating all these core values. So,
hey, real quick though, plug if people have questions, call into Tracy if they have a question or something like that, and we'll be glad to answer them here on the podcast.
Thanks, folks. Talk to you again soon.